All right, so this is what we're going to be building today. These little buttons, when you click them, they open a modal. This modal is completely done. There's no UI package. The only thing, I'm using a little bit of CSS, Tailwind CSS, but Tailwind CSS is completely optional. I just use it because it makes my life easier and it makes it faster. But you cannot use CSS. This is a built-in browser dialog modal. You can close it. See how you've got a little animation when it opens and closes. It's also being loaded dynamically. So as you hover over and then click it, the modal is empty before you hover over. So this is being loaded from the server at the time it's needed. So it's going to be very efficient. So that's what we are building right now. Let's get started. I'm going to fill out some, basic HTML. And we're going to build this completely from scratch. So just as you saw, starting from absolutely nothing. And let's call this, Htmx dynamic modal here. So we have our page, and over here, this is the steps we're going to take. So right now we're on the setup. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do here is just verify that the page is working. So let's over here. Here is the modal. There is no modal yet, of course. But okay, good. We're in the page. It's just plain HTML. We have nothing else. We have nothing else included here. So the first thing we're going to do is build a dialog item. And we'll give it an ID. We'll just do that ahead of time because, we're going to be using this ID. So let's call it my modal. Now, when you give this dialog an ID, you do actually want to use this underscore rather than a dash. Seems kind of like it won't matter, but I'll show you why in a minute. Okay, so we have our dialog. Let's end that. And let's save and just see what happens here. Okay, so our dialog exists. And by default, it's not getting shown, right? Because the dialog by default is hidden. We're going to use the dialog for this whole thing. Dialog is built into the browser. It already exists in the browser. Okay, so now we need to add a button. So we have our setup. This is our basic setup. And let me go back to here. We can sort of move down to our next one. So our setup was really nothing. It was just getting an HTML page in place. Okay, so now we're going to go and we're going to check out the button. So let's just create a regular button. We're not going to do anything special with it yet. We'll call it open modal. We'll save that. Okay, and I'm going to click that. Does nothing. We haven't told it to do anything yet, so that makes sense. So now we're going to say on click. I'm not going to do on lick, though. We're going to do on click. Okay, so we have our modal, and the way that we can access this, you can actually access anything that has an ID by doing window dot and then the ID. And this is why we didn't want to use the dash, because if you're trying to do a string like this, that doesn't work because it processes that differently. So we're using the underscore, not the dash. So my modal show modal, and this is just built into the browser. Okay, as you can see, I have not brought anything else over. This is just JavaScript that you can run on click. Okay, I'm going to refresh. Look at that. We see we put hi in here. There's our dialog. Okay, okay, so we cannot close it. There's nothing we can do really, but it is popping up. It does have the background grayed. It's got some default styling here, which we're going to change in a minute. But let's make the close work first. Okay, so actually I'll go back over to my steps here. So we've got our button. Now we're going to open and close the dialog. Okay. Okay, so first thing we want to do in here, maybe we make a button. Maybe we just make a little for now, a little X. So let's give this, I won't make it a button. I will make it a div. But on click, same thing, equals window dot close. Oh wait, window dot my modal dot close. Okay. So if I refresh over here, I click to open the modal. I'm up here. I open the modal. I've got that little X. Now when I click that X, it should close. Boop, there it goes. Okay, so we have like the most basic, open mode. This is just, the most basic dialog possible that's built into the browser. And that's fine. That's a good start. But let's take it to the next level here. Okay, so open and close dialog. Now this next part is going to be, we're going to do a little more work here. We're going to start adding the vanilla CSS styling. Okay, so we're not going to kind of make it perfect yet, but we are going to override some of the things about the basic dialog here. Okay, so we have our style. Oops, just added that for me. Okay, so we're overriding our dialog. So let's set some boundaries first here on what the dialog itself needs. So first of all, by default, it's displaying none, right? So let's change that first of all. This way we can see it while we're working on it. And I'm actually going to also have it refresh during this part. So I have a script I have a little snippet here. I'm going to copy that and put it up here. I did a little video on this, the hypermedia hot reload. It's just refreshing every 5 seconds. So refresh, if you can put this to however many seconds you want to refresh. That's just so that we can see this change as we're going. Okay, so all we've done is we've made the dialog show, even though it shouldn't be showing yet, and that's fine. So let me clean this up a little bit here. Okay, it's already it's pretty clean. It's just that this window is kind of small. That's okay though. Okay. All right, so we have our dialog, display flex. So what do we want to do with this? We're going to override how it works. So this will give us the ability to do some animation. So we're going to say opacity, and I would say 0. Eventually it's going to be 0 because we want it to be hidden. But for now, we still want to just see what it looks like. So let's just do 0.5. Okay. And let's see what happens up here when it refreshes. Okay, so you can see the opacity is a little different here. Okay, so now we want to change it when it's open. Okay, actually, first of all, when it's closed, you can still click this X and you can still do stuff with it. We want to disable that actually. So pointer events, none. We do not want it to be able to do any of this. We don't want it to be clickable while it's not there. So let's see what this looks like normally. It's just gone, okay? So we can just assume it's gone here. Okay, all right, so let's now add what it looks like when it's open. So it's gonna be going from the 2 different states, and this is how you say the open one. So it has an attribute on it, the open attribute. So now we can keep the display flex the same, that's fine. But we are going to now say opacity 1. And let's just take a look at that, because this should work so far. So I'm going to click open modal. And there it is. And let's see if I close it. Okay, yep, and it closes too. Okay, so all we've done is we've changed its sort of internal workings. Before it was display none to, I don't know, block or something. So now we've said it's flex both times, but we have pointer events none. Actually, we still want the pointer events to work. So actually that didn't work. It was just refreshing a second ago. So we're going to set the pointer events back to inherit. Now I'm going to save. Okay, so let's test that again. So we open the modal and we click to close. Perfect. Okay, so we've overridden some of the basic stuff. So now let's add some transitions here. So what we can do is put it right on the dialog. So you can say transition, and then we decide what to transition. So let's say opacity, and we'll just make it extra slow for now, 1 second. And then you say, what kind of transition. I think ease in is pretty much usually the best one. So let's try that. Oop, see how that kind of appeared, and now it's going to disappear. Now we actually don't want it to disappear. Like fade out. I just want it to disappear. So I'm actually going to put the transition just on the open state so that when you click it, it's immediately open, and now it's going to do this transition. So let me try that again. Okay, open modal. Now it fades in. And now when we close it, it should just disappear. Let me test that again. Open modal, fades in, close it, just disappears. Okay, good. So this is what we want. Let's also, actually no, first let's make it look a little nicer in general. We want to change the border. So border, 1 pixel, solid, light gray, I guess. Maybe there's no border. Right now it's got like this black border. Let's see here. Okay. So this is where I might start using Tailwind, actually. Because what we've done is we've overridden some of the basics, and I just want to be clear. If you want to, you can style this fully with CSS. You do not need Tailwind at all. But I will say that Tailwind is nice for stuff like this. So let me add a few more things before I start using Tailwind, actually. So let's say we wanted to change the background. So right now it kind of has, let's take a look at it again. It's pretty light, it does a little tiny thing over it, but let's say we want to do a little more with that. The way that you override that is this backdrop. Okay, dialog backdrop. And now you can say, we'll set the background. And we can use basically we'll do the same thing. 0, you can set the background to anything. So we'll just test it with a red first. Open it up, boop. Okay, now we just override the whole screen. We make that look red. What do you think? Perfect? No, let's do something a little better here. So we can do RBGA 0, 0, 0. That's black, but with the A, let's say 0.5. Let's see what that looks like. That's a little too dark. So let's go 0.3. Okay, good. We like that one. That's fine. That's fine. Okay. Now, we can also do some other stuff with this that's kind of cool, just to make it like a little bit fancier here if we want to. We can say background filter. And keep in mind, I have included nothing in this project yet. We're just using what's in the browser. So blur, let's say 3 pixels here. Let's give it a little blur. Actually, we'll just go nuts. We'll say like 10 pixels. So what does that do? Absolutely nothing. That did not work at all. Why not? Oh, okay. Yes. Let's see here. So let's put it back at 10. And this is not background filter. This is backdrop filter. Okay, so let's see what that looks like. Now, look how blurred that is. That's too much. But this is going to look cool on your website. It just is. It's like, I can't explain why. But look at that. It's got a nice blur. If you have photos here, they're going to blur out. It's going to really focus it on that. Okay, so that's pretty cool. Let's add one more thing before we move over to Tailwind. So before we start adding sort of Tailwind, I just want to keep this, as raw CSS as possible. But at some point, it just becomes a little tricky to keep doing it with CSS. But let's add a transform here. So it kind of pops in. So we have this transition on opacity here, but let's make it so that when it starts, we can say, let's say the scale is 0. We'll just start small for now, 0.5, so we can really see it happen here. And then over here, we say transform scale 1. And you can imagine all the different stuff you can do here. I'm just using scale because I want it to pop in like this. But you don't have to use that. You could use rotate, or, you could slide it in from the side. Like, there's all kinds of options here. Okay, yeah, translate would be that one. So let's say scale, transform. And then we'll do the same, 1 second. We're not going to keep it at 1 second. This is just so we can see what's happening. Okay, so we save, refresh. Ooh, it's not doing it all. What do we want here? So let's try that again. There we go. Okay, it just hadn't reloaded here. Whoop. Okay. Okay, so let's make this a little closer. The problem is right now we cannot really see what we're doing here because the modal, it just has this one little X in it. So it's not, you're not getting a real, it's kind of has not a lot of style to it. But we have this kind of built in. Let's make these a little bit nicer. We'll just make it pop in a little bit. And so we're going to make the scale, and let's make these like 0.1, just like they just pop in real fast. And let's verify what that looks like. Refresh here, open modal. Let's see, was that? Okay, yes, it's popping in. Okay, good. So the next thing we're going to do here is start to add some Tailwind to it. So let me go back to here. We've got the vanilla CSS styling. Now we're going to add some Tailwind. And the first thing I'm going to do is add Tailwind to the project. So let me just paste that in. I've got my file here of little things I'm going to need. Okay, so we paste that in. Not going to do anything yet because we haven't, well, it changes some of the styles right away. So maybe we should make this button a little nicer using Tailwind just to start so we can sort of see how that works. Okay, so I usually do, first of all, let's give this a little bit of space for us. So we'll do like P32. I don't know. Let me see what that looks like. And then we're going to add our button. So we'll say text white, background, we'll just go blue 500. Hover is going to be background blue 600, so to get a little darker. It's going to make a nice transition. We're going to do rounded full, and we're going to give it a little, let's see what that looks like before we give it some space. Okay, so it looks, obviously needs a little bit of space here. Let's give it a shadow. Let's see, let's give it a shadow on the hover too. We'll give it a shadow on the hover, and let's give it PX4 and PY2. Let's see what kind of button that looks like here. Do we like it? Open modal. I think it's fine. Yeah, hover over it, gets a little darker. We no longer need our here is the modal. We just have our button to open the modal. Okay, let's see what that looks like. Okay, it opens the modal. We've removed some of this, the modal is looking pretty flimsy right now. But what I've done is I have added a form here. So I just wanted to do this ahead of time so that we have some, this is just a standard form. And what we can do is, I just want to have something to look at here. So I'm just going to take this, and actually maybe we'll just include it over here. So that there's not too much code over here. So just instead of this little X, actually I'll keep the X for now. But we're going to use something for that instead also too. We'll make it look a little nicer. So now we're going over here and we're doing the Tailwind styling, right? So I am going to start by adding that form. So I'm going to do an include. And let's see, this is in pages. .examples, .modal, form. Okay, let's see what that looks like. Okay, so the form is not visible by default. Okay, so this is looking a little bit, we've got a couple things going on here. We've got, obviously there's some flex issues because we put flex on the whole dialog. So let's maybe first of all wrap this form. Save that, and I'm gonna make the opacity like just 0.5 again on this, so that we don't have to actually no, we'll just make it 1. While I'm styling this this form, I just want it to kind of look the way it's gonna look. So that we don't need to keep clicking it to see it. Okay, So we have our modal. This is what it's going to look like. So this is the form. I included some stuff here. Right now it's not clickable because it's not open, but if I open it, now I can see in here what these different things are. Okay. So first of all, let's make it so that our cancel closes the form. So right now we have this on click equals my modal close. I'm just going to copy that. And I'm going to go into my form here and down to my cancel and add that to my cancel button. So on click, it's going to close the modal. So now if we open the modal and then cancel, it'll close. Okay, good. So far, so good. Probably for now, we're just going to have this actually on the save too. And that's just for fun. Eventually, we're going to have the save actually do something. But for now, the save will also close the modal. Okay. And I like to have a little close button up in the top right. So where that, the X is over in the top left, but up in the top right. So I'm actually going to go to this Heroicons here. Oops. So I like to go to Heroicons. Let's see if it can just be here. Close. We have our close. I'm going to copy the SVG. Okay, now we're going to add that SVG back in where our X was. So instead of this X, it's now going to be this SVG. I know this looks a little messy, but we can always clean it up if we need to, if we want to, and put move stuff around. But I don't really think we need to. I think it's fine. So hopefully we can sort of tell what's happening here. This is going to be the close. Let's give that a class of float right. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, should we refresh? Should be floating to the right. And it is not floating to the right. Let me see here. Why would that not? Okay, div class. Oh, because this is part of a flex. Dialog has flex on it. So I'm going to put this inside my class here. Okay, so the whole thing had flex on it, which was pushing that. So now let's see. This should now move over to the right here. There it is. Okay, that's a nice spot for a close. We also kind of need like a title for this modal, right? So let's add that, and we can put that down here. So div class equals. How about my special editing modal? It's terrible. It's gonna be it though. It's perfect. We'll make it bold. Let's make the text black, and let's see what that looks like. Let's go font a little bigger. So text large. And what else do we want out of that? Maybe we want to have a border B here. And probably that's going to mean some so let's see what that looks like when the modal's open. Yeah, okay, so that needs some spacing here. Let's give it, we'll just try like a P8 to start. Let's go P4. I think we use P4 for other stuff sometimes. Okay, that looks a little better, except that my close is now kind of, I want that close to probably be inside this actually. So let's bring this out. Okay, let's see what our close looks like now. So we're trying to make this look nice. That's part of the whole purpose of this video, is not to just speed through this. We're trying to make it look and feel nice. So that's why I'm taking some time here to do this. Okay, so we have our dialog. Let's add some class to that here. So we'll do rounded large. We're also going to do a shadow large, just to give it a little bit of that feeling here. And I'm going to turn off the refresh temporarily so that I can actually keep it open for a minute. And I'll refresh and open the modal. Well, looks pretty good, right? Like just for a default here, we've got nice, it's blurring the background. I'll close it and open it up again. So, okay, let me also get rid of it so that we can't see it here. Okay, so we open the modal, whoop, close it, whoop. Okay, also I want to make that so it looks like it's clickable too. So class float right and cursor pointer. Refresh. Open modal. A couple more things. Text gray 400, and then when we hover, we'll do text gray 500. And let's do a transition. So everything is just going to be smooth, right? It's nice. Open the modal. See how it's a little bit. Let's see, we can go even a little darker on that. Open the modal, my special editing modal. You hover over it. You can tell it's like a close thing. This is going to close it. Delete's going to do something. Cancel. Close. Okay. All right. So this is looking pretty good, right? It's pretty slick. If we wanted to, the browser doesn't by default add click elsewhere to close the modal. But we could do that, and I may do that. I don't think I'll do it in this video because it just feels a little bit separate. We're going to do a second video where we add some stuff to this. So but we can add that, just have a line of JavaScript that will check for clicks and see if it's within here. We'll see if the modal's open. If the click is within here, it's fine. If the click is outside, it'll close it. Right? So that's not so bad. Okay, but this modal's looking pretty nice, I think. So let's take a look at what is next here. So we did our Tailwind styling. That's good enough for now. Loading content with Htmx. So right now, this is not a dynamic modal, and we've used no Htmx. So what we're going to do is we're going to include our Htmx, CDN. We love the CDN. You can also use it. You don't need a CDN. You can also use it just by copying. You could go to this URL and open it up, copy paste it into a JavaScript file, and just include it in your project. So lots of ways to include HTMX. Okay, but we want to load content dynamically with HTMX. What does that mean? It means, so let's say if we go back to our open modal here, what if we have like 10 of these and they're in a row? I'm not going to do that right now. Let's see. Do I want to do that right now? Next time, updating data and reusing your modal. Okay, well, let's at least make 10 of them. That part's easy. So let's add our button. We have our open modal button. Okay, I equals 0. I is less than 10. I plus plus. So this is just a little loop to make 10 of these buttons here, just to show that they all do the same thing. Okay. Okay, let's also make this block and give it some margin. Okay, so let's say each of these open something different. Right now, they're all going to open the same modal, but let's say each of them corresponded to a model on your back end, right? So if you click this one, you can't have the same form for each one because we need to edit that particular data. So we're going to use HTMX to load dynamically this form instead of having it right in here, okay? So the first thing we're going to do is just remove this. Okay, that's gone. So it's going to say loading. We can make that look nice if we want to. Okay, so so already, don't like that. Don't like the look of that. So let's go and let's make this dialog. Let's have it take up 3/4 of the screen. Okay, why did that also not? Okay, this one needs to be with full then. Okay, so we're getting closer. And by default, let's make our loading, we'll actually make this an ID. So we'll say modal content. Now, if we had a bunch of them, we would probably give that, the model, like whatever model this is that we're trying to click, we'd probably give it like the ID so that each one has its own content. You know what? I'm not so sure about that, actually. We'll talk about reusing modals later. Okay, but the important thing is for now, we want to give it some space here. Now we will hopefully never even see this loading, but we're going to have it here. Okay, so loading. Let's make it text center. And let's make it text extra large. Or we could just do like a loading thing, loading spinner. But that's okay. You get the idea. You could easily just add that loading spinner there. Okay, it's too dark. Text gray 400. Loading. Okay, good. So what is it loading? That is the question. And how do we load it? That is the other question. Okay, so we're going to use Htmx here. And what Htmx does is it takes snippets, like, for instance, this modal form that we were doing before, and it places them into the DOM where you want. So we want it right there. Right? And we already gave that an ID up here. So we have our modal content. This is where we want it to go. Okay. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to put this. So, okay, there's a few ways we could do this. We could have it so that it loads it just as soon as the page loads. All right. And then every modal behind the scene is going to be full and you click it and it's already loaded. That's one way to do it. But we're not going to do that. We're going to load it completely dynamically so that we're going to do it a little bit clever. When you hover over, it is going to load the contents of the modal. And then by the time you click it, it's already going to be there. Okay. So if you just were to hover over each of them, it's actually going to load all of them. But when you hover over it, it's going to load it. Okay, so the way we're going to do that is we're actually going to go to the button. The button is where your Htmx action is going to happen here. So we're going to say hx get. We're making a get request to the server. And that's going to be at, what do we have this? Pages. Do we have pages? How does that work? No, it's at modal examples modal form, I think. Let's see here. Where did I put this? I need to make sure I have the right. Okay, yes, this is correct. Okay, examples modal form. So hx get examples modal. So that's the place that it's going to get this snippet right here. Let me make sure this is saved. So this was the form that we were already had in there before. But now let's just test if it's working. So what we can do is hx trigger equals, and let's say load. So when the page loads, it should get that. So now these should actually just work. Okay. And we've got some kind of issue here. Okay. So the issue is we have not defined a target. So, you got to remember sometimes it doesn't make any sense. This is putting the hx get for modal form. If you don't define a target, it's going to put it where you called it. So this is putting that into the button. Each of those forms go into the button, not what we want to do. So instead, we're going to go to our target, and the target is modal content. So let's put this. Target is, and you just use a CSS selector, modal content. Okay, and we'll refresh. And there it is. So what this was doing is getting from examples modal form, hxget. The trigger for when it should get it was on the load, and the target for where it should put it is modal content. And that's right here. So it replaced this loading. And if we want to, we can look and see this, in the network tab. But I don't think we need to right now. So we've put this in here, but this is not exactly what we want, because actually what it's doing is it's loading all of them at once. So what we're going to do is we're going to do on mouse enter is going to be the trigger. And I think maybe we need to prove that it's the correct modal. Maybe not. Maybe we're just going to skip that part for now. We're going to just show that you can load it dynamically for this video. So I just changed it to mouse enter. Maybe I will actually open the network tab here. So let's inspect so we can see what's happening. We go to the network. Okay, we close all this garbage. Now, we have hx trigger mouse enter, hx get examples modal form. So when we mouse enter over one of these buttons, it should do the hx get, and it should actually put the content into the right place. So let's watch that network tab. Boom, modal form, and it did it a couple times because I put my mouse over a few of them. So as I go over them, it's going to fill them in. Boop, 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 boop. Look at that, filling them in. Now when I click them, boop, there they are. All that data is loaded. Let's prove that it's working here. So we're going to go to the modal form, and where do we put this? Let's put at the top here. We'll just put like a big div here. Div class equals, we'll do text large here. Text large, font black, and we'll put the time. So date, this is like the server time here. My favorite way of doing it. Okay. So now we've changed the modal form. So when it loads, and I'm going to just hover over, boop. Oops, I need to be on the page. Boop. Now we saw it in the network tab. Now let's click to open. We've got the server time right up here. Okay. And that is not the time where I am, but that's okay. So now if we do it again, close this, and I hover over, well, it's still 6:40. So let's add some seconds here so we can actually see the time updating. So we will say HIS. Now that's going to include the seconds. And we got to give this a little bit of space here, for God's sake. Okay. So now we watch the network tab. We're going to clear everything out so we can just see it fresh. Boop, hover over, something happened. Now we click. It's at 42 seconds. Click it again, 48 seconds. So it's loading it every time. And notice, we do it on the mouse enter. So there's no time for it to not be there, right? These network calls, you're just getting HTML and putting it in the right spot. It's going to be fast. So you're never going to see, maybe you can try to beat it sometime. Boom. But I'll refresh and then boom. You're never going to see that loading area. And if you're worried about that, you can put like a placeholder in there, and so that it's like, but you're just not going to see it, because the time it takes from when you enter till when you click, and then there's a little animation, that's enough time for this all to load in. So it's going to look slick. It's going to be slick. You're not going to have that much information on your page because you're loading it dynamically only when you need it. So let me go back to, we'll see where we are in our list here. So we're loading the content with Htmx. So now we're loading the content with Htmx. And the next thing that we're going to do, not in this video, next time I'll do a different video on how to use this modal to update data. So we're going to use hx post, we're going to push new data, and we're going to reload the stuff on the page. And then we're going to figure out how to reuse this modal. So we're already kind of reusing it in this, but it's a little shaky right now because every modal is actually exactly the same. They're loading the same data. It's not based on the actual model. But what you can do is you can have a single page with, maybe a small, medium, large modal at the bottom. And then you just go and say which modal you want to load your data into. And then you can load all your data from the back end, just like this. And get your modal in there with the correct stuff at the time that the user clicks it.